Hey everybody, welcome to the Marquez Says Show. I'm your host, Marquez Mosier, and this is my co-host, cohort, and eldest son, Austin Jordan. He and I always seem to bring out the feisty side of each other, and it leads to some very spirited conversations. There's never really any one topic. We see the world from many different perspectives, and sometimes we agree, and sometimes we don't. Either way, it gets very interesting, so sit back, relax, and have a bit of fun at our expense as we explore some of the most unexpected perspectives you'll ever hear about the world we live in. So, let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to the Marquez Says Show. I am Marquez, your host. This is my co-host, cohort. There he is, right there, the co-conspirator, Austin Jordan. If you're watching, you can see it. He's got his googly eyes. Googly eyes. It's just fun to say, right? Googly eyes.
You said co-conspirator, and I was like, whoa. Whoa.
You don't know what you're doing, but
incriminated. I don't want to be incriminated in nothing.
Too late. I got video recordings. Too late. See, so
it wasn't.
So anyway, welcome to season 2. For those of you who are actually listening to this first episode, season 2, we're doing a slightly different format. We used to have a subject of a topic of the day, so to speak, and we still kind of do. But quite honestly, the feedback we got was that everybody was just really excited to just kind of hear us talk. Because if this is your first time, you'll find out that it's a little goofy, a little serious, a little smart, believe it or not. But it's just different. And so and if you have listened to us before, then you'll understand exactly where I'm coming from. So so say hello, Austin.
Hello.
See, there you go. For those of you who don't realize, we used to do this in person, but we can't anymore because he left. He left California. He left his mind.
Oh no, we're already frozen. We're already in technical difficulties.
No, I'm not. Our audio is just fine. Remember, this is a podcast. The video is just for those who want to check us out.
What's up? I couldn't hear you, though.
You couldn't hear me?
No, what'd you say?
You know what? I'm getting the dreaded, your internet is unstable. You know what? So am I. I guess it matches.
Yeah, normally I don't care about what you're saying, but it's important in this scenario because we have to play off each other. So if I can't hear you, we're kind of dead in the water.
All right, so basically when I say a joke and I don't get a laugh, that actually just means he didn't hear it. It's not that he didn't think it was funny.
That's the only reason.
So, off to a rip-roaring start. We're going to do this. This is, we're going to do parts basically throughout the month, depending on how much we have.
Right.
And this is August 2021, part 1. And, I mean, if you've been following the news, pop culture, politics, which is pretty much all things we cover. I mean, just whatever. We've got Afghanistan, we've got mask mandates, we've got overreach, government overreach. But there's a twist on that one, actually. We've got Britney Spears and topless, whatever her topless things is to show how independent she is.
Wait. What? How is it that I've heard about Afghanistan mask mandates, but I haven't heard about Britney Spears topless? I feel kind of gypped.
Because you're working too much.
Yeah,
just remember, she's old enough to be your mom. Well, not really.
No, I don't think.
Older
maybe
sister.
Close, but
maybe a big older sister. But either way, I digress.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, because of OnlyFans now, I mean, there's a website for everyone, but unfortunately, they're restricting their use. So I don't know anymore. We're gonna have some new.
Yeah.
ones.
Okay. So funny enough about that, like the OnlyFans thing was blown really out of proportion.
I get it. That was a good pun.
Oh God, they're not even banning pornography. Like I read about it, so because I thought like, damn, this is crazy. They're gonna lose like their entire subscription base. I was I know they're trying to reach 1 billion as evaluation with sponsors and stuff like that, but the whole point of people wanting to use their platform is, but they're not even they're just banning like violent sexual acts and stuff like that.
Yeah, I understood it as, I didn't read it, but I understood it as that it was the like explicit kind of sexual acts and things like that. So you're right. It's kind of a borderline kind of like, okay, whatever. I mean, there's a lot of gray area, but in a way it's kind of a sticky situation for them.
Oh God. It's still kind of a slap in the face to the people that helped build the platform, though, regardless of however it's looked at.
No more slaps in the face.
Oh my God, do you just have a million puns for this? Why is it that me, the 23-year-old, has like the level-headed, mature take on this? And you're
Because
over
that's what
here.
it is. This is perfect. I mean, okay, so you know what? Let's switch. Did Biden blow Afghanistan? Or wait, hold on. I need a segue here. Did he really screw up the withdrawal?
Oh my God. I feel like they're in way too deep to pull out now. Like,
oh no.
like I think that they've just, yeah, they blew their load too early.
Oh, it was so unexpected, right? You know, so no, okay, back on a serious note. Okay. So back on a serious note, as far as that goes, as you could tell, this is what we're talking about. We're literally going to talk about everything. Throw in some puns because I'm a dad. I get to call them dad jokes. So, you know, we'll throw that in. And then you've also got, you know, him over there in Tennessee, Austin, just, you know, trying to be the mature take on it. But howdy.
You said Tennessee.
Wow. Let's not discuss vaccination rates, okay, Mr. Tennessee.
Okay, I tried to get a COVID test. It's not easy. Like, let me rephrase. It's not that it's difficult, but they don't really have any rapid tests available for like the mass public. There are some, but very few. So by the time you get your results, like you can't just take 4 days off of your normal life to be like, oh no, I can't go to work because I might have COVID. Right. That's not how that works.
Well, you know what? You could just get vaccinated and you don't have to worry about it.
I am vaccinated.
Unless you're going, oh, that's right, because you were traveling, right?
Right, yeah.
So April and I are going to have to deal with that too.
Yeah, so I was severely concerned that I actually may have had COVID. But it turns out that it was probably just regular bronchitis. But it in the moment, it was very COVID-esque.
Yeah.
But I couldn't get in. There was nobody that had a rapid test. So, and I'd already been sick for so long that, like, by the time I would have gotten results, it would have been like past. It was just a whole mess.
Well, it's interesting you said that because we actually here in California too, we have to have one because we're going on a trip and we need to have within 72 hours of leaving, we have to show proof that we're negative, even though we are fully vaccinated and so on and so forth. And it wasn't the easiest thing either. I mean, did I say California? I meant Washington.
Yeah.
So it was interesting that that we ran into kind of the same problem, but I think it's because that's unusual. Nowadays, people are expected just to essentially, if you think you've been exposed and stuff, you just get the normal test, quarantine, because chances are you were. It still is a disruption in your, you know, for those who have to technically, you know, work daily, but yeah, I was finding it interesting that all of these, that when I said earlier about the overreach, this is what I found ironic is that conservatives, traditional Republicans, do not want the government to overreach. They would prefer local communities to handle situations at a local level or a state level, which technically that's what local municipalities are trying to do. But the difference here is that they feel that mask mandates are in their best interest of their community. But then you have states like Florida, with the governor saying, well, we don't like that. So we're going to initiate a state executive order saying that you are not allowed to do what you feel is best for your local community.
Yeah,
which on the surface, it's like, how ironic is that? I mean, you basically have told everybody, you built your party on the fact that you believe that the states and the local should make these decisions. The government should stay out of it, you know, unless it's completely necessary, etc. And here you are saying that, well, no, that's not the case. You need to do what we tell you to do. Otherwise, we're going to deduct funds. We're going to stop funding for your school districts. We're going to take money from your school supervisors, this board of supervisors. And you go, like, wait, hold on. Isn't that exactly the opposite of what you know? And of course, it's done in the other way too.
Yeah, because it's not about what the mandate is. It's about the fact that the mandate happens, and that's what's so. I feel like with the governor, like what you're talking about, of Florida, is missing. It's like, and that's the biggest irony, is you can still be, overreaching your control no matter which direction you go.
Right, absolutely.
You can be overreaching your control in the right or the left. And it's very funny and ironic that something like that would happen,
And
but not unsurprising. I am not surprised.
Yeah, some of the older podcasts, you were predicting that, we needed to kind of be careful on what one side did because the other side was going to do it too, which we all know. And it's funny because, yes, you have these mask mandates, but there's a difference. The federal government has never said you have to wear a mask. And the federal government has never said you have to get vaccinated. It's come from state levels. And then, of course, now it's actually at local levels. So there is that huge irony that you said, I want the states to have these decisions, to make these decisions. And when they do, if you don't agree with why they did it, then you're getting all upset. Because as far as I understand, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I follow this for relatively closely, there's no federal mandate and there is no federal command or law, certainly not a law, because I'd have a big problem with that. I would have a problem if the federal government started telling me like certain things like like past a congressional law. I'd have a problem with that. I would have a problem with a congressional law telling me to do something, in this lines. We'd have to have a serious conversation about something like that.
Right. I don't honestly know if there is one. I don't think so either, because I feel like there'd be more hoopla over certain states going against that. So I don't think that there ever was one. But I understand that, like, California, for example, being so strict about everything and deciding they were going to take over the reins and control everything and everyone, whatever their intentions are, good or bad. I had a problem with it and I left. There's
yeah. Not everybody can just leave though.
I think that if a 23-year-old who doesn't really make very much money could do it, I had your guys' help, but
how about a family? A family couldn't.
If I could do it, I would say that more people can do it than they realize.
That's true.
So, and I say that, I'm not sure. Are you frozen? Oh no, you're just being still. Okay. I say that so because people get so mad and angry about being told what to do, what not to do. There's a lot of land. There is a whole country that you can go explore in
True. But you got to remember, families, it would be much more difficult. Couples, singles, yes. Couples, probably. Families would be difficult. You couldn't. But again, it's within, even if you're within California, the overriding. It actually showed. It actually showed, which is funny because again, this is going against the narrative that a lot of people are hearing, is that before Delta took hold, in that small little window when people were vaccinated, and before Delta, there was about a couple weeks and a month, things did go back to quote unquote normal. You were vaccinated. They were pretty close.
Yeah. I feel
all those things about they're never gonna go, they're doing this to control the society and they're trying to split us and all that stuff. It's like, no. Basically, when you got vaccinated, the mandates and the stuff was coming off. It's like, okay, you don't have to wear masks anymore. That wasn't supposed to happen according to the doomsayers. You were always going to have to do this and et cetera, et cetera. The whole point about all of this is that they just communicate wrong. You get a COVID vaccine, it does not mean you're not going to get COVID. It never did, but they never communicated that. It was made to feel like if you get the vaccine, you're not going to contract it. That was never the case. It never is with vaccines. Some are better than others, of course, but it just meant that if you get it, now we're back to, it's probably kind of just like the flu. Big deal. It's just like everything else you're going to get. But again, the communication was horrible. But anyway, back to the original point.
No, real quick, because I want to talk about that communication thing. That's been my whole point for over a year now.
Yeah.
It's been the communication of this from literally back to day one about this. The communication on this issue has been so bad, and it's honestly kind of insulting because the way they're communicating it is like they're talking to everybody as if they're so dumb. That's what they're doing. They're talking to everybody as if they're children.
Well, I think it's even more than that.
The nuance. There's the nuance of certain things, why this is happening, what is really going to happen, boom, 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 like all this stuff, or they
Yeah.
don't have an actual, they don't know what they're communicating.
Well,
I think
see, that
that's
was
a
the problem
big
at the
part of it,
beginning.
is they get up and they start talking and they don't really know what they're supposed to be saying.
Well,
They're
and I
just
think
saying.
that was yeah, you're right. And that was a big part of it at the beginning because we didn't really know. And unfortunately, that started everything off on a bad step. And it took a trajectory that never really changed. Mainly because you're
I think we're in a very similar space right now too, with the Delta coming up and all that stuff, with people being legitimately concerned that there'll be a shutdown, with people like all this stuff. We're in a similar thing. It's like our case numbers are significantly higher than they ever were.
right.
Why
there's a
would
big
we
difference.
not do that?
Okay, but there's a big difference though. Now it's much more about a choice. That's the thing. That's the problem, is that it's the vaccine has become political. Problem is that it's a choice now. It wasn't a choice before. If you got a choice of getting sick or being around someone who's sick and stuff, it is now. You get vaccinated, for the most part, yeah, you might still get COVID.
Right.
You might even still spread COVID, but you're not going to get sick to the point where it's anything different than normal, unless of course you've got external situation. I mean, I'm taking those out of the situation because those are the ones we do need to protect. If you're in a nursing home,
Right.
or that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the majority. If you get vaccinated, you are going to protect yourself and you're going to protect the ones around you. Yes, you could still catch it. Yes, you could still spread it. But get this, if you vaccinated, you're vaccinated, I'm vaccinated. If I caught it because of where I work or whatever the case is, I'm out. I may get it. I may feel it. I may not feel it. I'm relatively healthy, so chances are I may not even notice, but I may give it to you. Okay, you're vaccinated. Chances are you're not going to feel it. You're not going to see it. The only problem is when you end up running up against somebody who's unvaccinated. And unfortunately, that's a choice. So to me, part of it is I have to wear my mask because of the choice of someone else. Okay. I mean, until if it's that bad and it's hurting our medical system and that stuff like that, okay, I guess that's fine. I'll take that. I'll do that. It's for the betterment of society and stuff. But it raises the question to, well, it's a choice. These people are choosing not to. And if they got a legitimate choice, great. If it's legit, fine. But if it's because you just don't want to let the Democrats win, own the Dems, or it's because you don't believe the science, no. That's not. I'm not sure I'm cool with that. I mean, that's another discussion that has to be talked about.
Definitely, I agree. Well, that's just being a partisan asshole. Like, it's not a good enough reason. And if that is your reason, fine, whatever. But like, it's not a very good one. Like, no. And I'll say that to your face. It's like, yeah, everybody's entitled to their reasons and opinions to do something. If that's what you want to do, okay. But like, it's kind of dumb. Like, it's pretty short-sighted. It's a very shallow reason. But whatever. Right. I mean, okay.
It's just kind of hard to defend. It's hard to defend.
Like, it is hard to defend. And I didn't wear a mask. I don't wear a mask unless I'm physically told I have to. But I'm vaccinated. I don't really know anybody. I'm not going to give it to anybody. And frankly, the people in Donaldson County, Tennessee, they don't care. So that's the choice that we're making as a collective. If we get sick, we get sick. But that's a choice we made.
But there's a problem with that. The problem with that theory is that for those who are vaccinated, it actually works out just fine. But if you have a community that's predominantly unvaccinated, and that can overwhelm your healthcare system or your healthcare providers right there, then it's a problem. Because now everybody, not everybody, but if the ICU units are full, if the emergency rooms are full and stuff, and they're trying to take care of the symptoms of these unvaccinated people that are sick, then that's not deprioritizing, but it's causing a problem for those who chose to get vaccinated and who are sick. So
yeah, that's true. I agree.
And that's why it's
like,
hard.
It is hard, but it's almost like, is that the price though that you pay? Because there's always going to be a price for certain freedoms and all that stuff. Is that the price for this freedom until we move out of? And well, I mean,
if it was short
really
of,
dramatic, but
I agree with you. If it was short of, like, I think it's much more. It should be hyper local, because if my county is not having an issue with the ICU beds and stuff like that, fine, we're all good. You want to get vaccinated, great. If you don't want to get vaccinated, great. Your reasons maybe suck and stuff, but as long as we're not actually impacting each other in a common zone, basically, then I think it's okay. Yeah. But this is that whole thing about your freedoms don't override mine when they become, like freedom of speech or, et cetera, et cetera. When they come up and butt up against taking away mine, then it's a problem. But that has to be a hyper local thing. Like you said, your county, if your county medical and the county, and they're saying, hey, we're okay, we can handle it. We're that's fine. I mean, obviously they're going to be honest.
I don't honestly know.
But I mean, if it is, just hypothetically, if it is, okay, you guys don't have to have mask mandates. Don't, you mean, if the county doesn't want to or the state. But the problem is when, this is the reason it's different is because it's a choice. If your choice is impacting, like if a parent's choice to not have their kids not kids vaccinated, but they're vaccinated and stuff, and it impacts my kids because they're around people that could have COVID, and then they go to school, and then they give my kids getting sick, all because they didn't. You see what I'm saying? There's a problem with when it the two butt up against each other, and right now they are. If we had just a slightly more people vaccinated, it wouldn't be a problem. Sure, unvaccinated people are getting sick. Unvaccinated people are going to the hospital in much higher numbers. Unvaccinated people, fine. Problem is that there is still such a huge population of unvaccinated people that it's still overwhelming some healthcare systems. Not all of them, not like it was before.
Right.
But so
it's hard for me.
But it's got to be hyper local.
Yeah, it does have to be more hyper local, and that's why I try not to look at things on this big scale anymore, because honestly, I've lost faith in trying to make something work on a big scale. I don't really think it's going to work right now, and I don't think it's really the way to go. As a collective group of people, and it actually, this could kind of tie into Afghanistan a little bit if we take it to its farthest extent. But if the small communities just kind of focus on what it is that community wants, it's everything around that community, and then the other communities, everything will be better. And then as a byproduct, if every individual community is doing well, then the whole system does well. So I'm
you have to have well-meaning people for that.
I think most people are.
I do too.
I think people get so swept up though when they're watching the national news though, and these national news, we have to remember they're on purpose, regardless of whatever side of the spectrum, to cause some sort of doom or controversy for you to be like, oh my God, because that is significantly more entertaining than than something good. And that's just the way that it is. It's the way it's been for a long time. And it's going to be the way that
it actually, we've touched on this for a long time now, but it wasn't always that way. The news was, it wasn't biased.
No. Yeah, I'm not saying that it's always been that way, but for a long time now, it has been this way.
Yes, it has. And I do agree that it's that division where you have to start. I think actually there's cracks showing, and unfortunately, cracks are just something that will still take years to overcome, decades maybe. But there are cracks showing that people start to realize that when you start the realization that we're living in two worlds, with those who are not even consuming quote unquote mainstream media, they're consuming fringe media, and they're becoming a larger and larger group. But the fact that we know that there's a larger and larger group that is there, and they're living in a different reality, they're not hearing the same things about why vaccines are safe, why you should take them, things like that, because it's non-political. When that aspect of it, that awareness, something that I always talk about, the awareness, kindness, and action. The awareness is going to start things, because slowly but surely you may end up with two different quote unquote societies. But then again, we always had. They're just divided. It's just that they'll be divided along a different line this time, as opposed to divisions in the past.
Right. I definitely, exactly. And to me, so after that awareness, right? So we see that the next step for me is, why are these people turning to fringe media? And it's because the distrust for mainstream media is so high. Okay, why is the distrust for mainstream media so high? Well, because frankly, they. Oh, go ahead. You were gonna say something.
No. What you were saying is true, but there's something I mean, you can finish it, but part of it is though is that the people that they're listening to, the fringe people are listening to, are telling them the mainstream media is lying. The mainstream media is not telling you the truth, and then they go, and then it becomes a circle where they go, that's true, and in some cases, it is. It's not that it's without merit or without truth.
Yeah.
But then the fringe people then turn around and come back and go, well, see, this is why you need to listen to us, because we're, people are telling us that the mainstream media is lying. It's like, you're the ones that are telling the people that they're turning around and then telling you that it's a loop. They're causing their own loop.
Right. But the mainstream media is in their own loop as well, though, because they're like, look, see how crazy these fringe media people are. And then they feed into it.
They are,
too.
Austin. They are. The fringe people are.
Know, right.
See,
but
that's the difference.
But the mainstream media is not without blame. There's a lot of
but two things can exist mutually. They're not mutually exclusive.
Which is what I'm saying, though. The mainstream media is playing into it, though, and they know what they're doing. They're instigating on purpose, just like the fringe people are. Like,
but there's a big difference. There's a huge difference. You have mainstream media, which is instigating and making the fringe look bad. You're right, and they do it. They do some of the times it's over the top. But the problem with that is that they then discredit when they need to be credible. They somewhat discredit themselves because of that. Because now they've alienated those people that they actually, as a whole, as a society as a whole, that's the problem. I think that you're right. We need the mainstream media to basically be mainstream. They tell us about the vaccines. They tell us about that stuff. Now, are they overhyping stuff? Absolutely. Like this whole, when they talk about the people getting, the breakthrough infections, do the numbers. It's like 0.0001% of people are getting sick from it and stuff. So, but they have to sell airtime. They have to sell that. So you're right. Those are the big numbers. And, what I was going to say was,
oh yeah, go ahead.
No, what I was going to say is that the loop, because ultimately though, the mainstream media is not necessarily trying to cause division. They're trying to cast out the fringe. And we have to remember the fringe is media. I mean, the fringe is entertainment. They're not telling the truth. They're not telling, it
depends on the fringe network, though. There are some fringe networks that you would consider fringe because it's not a CNN, a Fox News, or something like that. That is trying to tell the truth.
I don't know, man.
In an unfiltered sort of way. Like,
no, I don't.
Even outside of COVID or something like that, like a CNN or a Fox News, and I use those two because they're the most mainstream and on polar opposites.
MSNBC is more polar opposite to Fox than CNN is.
That's true. So that's fine. Either one of those three. But even outside of COVID, when they're reporting on something, they take a fraction of it. And it's not necessarily the most truthful fraction of it. It's just the fraction of it that's going to get the most views. So then you're not even really reporting the news per se. You're reporting a fraction of that news. And then people latch on to that. But then you watch the whole clip and you're like, wait, hold on a second. That's not really what happened. What's the context there? And then you it's just because I've been very outspoken. I don't like the Trumps, but like what they do, to what's her name, Melania or whatever, they take so much of what she says out of context just because she's married to Donald Trump. And then they like show the little clip and then you watch the full clip and you're like, what the hell? That's not what she said at all. and like they frame it to be contextualized with what her husband may have said. That's not fair. Like, and that's not okay. And so that's what I mean.
I get that. Yes. And I agree with you. There's no disagreement there. I just wanted to come back to the fact that they're both doing the basically like same tactics, so to speak. But ultimately, though, you have to understand where they come back to. Like if they do a tactic and throw something out, where do they come back to their baseline? And the baseline for a lot of the fringe, like OEN and Newsmax, I think it is, stuff like that, is flat out lying. I mean, they flat out lie. And so when you don't catch the mainstream media, even Fox does it, but they're not even. I mean, they don't do it as much. They do it in their own way. But even Fox, CNN, MSN, they all do it, but they don't particularly lie. Fox won't cover something. I'll give them that. I mean, I'm not a Fox fan at all. And when it comes down to like actually perpetuating lies, like the big lie and all this stuff, they don't necessarily, I mean, their hosts do, don't get me wrong. The commentators, they do, but they don't necessarily, they're not exactly lying, like flat out lying to try to get viewership. Yeah. They're just not covering things. They're covering things with such a huge slant that it caters to their people.
I think that both sides do that.
But
Fox News being the main perpetrator of it. And when I say both sides, I mean of mainstream media, liberal and conservative, but not Fringe, because you're right. Fringe will just outright lie depending on the network. My whole point, though, had nothing to do with whether or not Fringe networks were legit, because that's not the point. The point is that there's a reason that the distrust for mainstream media has grown so large, and it's not something that's happened in the past 5 years. It's something that's been growing for a long time, so we can't blame it on the rise of Trump and all that stuff. It's been happening for a long, long time. Alex Jones was a thing before Donald Trump.
Yeah, you're right.
So and that's my point, is how do we fix that? How do we reach out to, like, what does the society do because this is something that people want to make a national issue? How do you address that? And who do you hold accountable? And ultimately, you can't target the fringe groups because you won't get anywhere. So how do you hold the mainstream media? How do you do something to help bolster their credibility?
Well, you do realize, though, that I think part of this issue, though, is that for the most part, like when you talk about if you have faith in the fact checkers and things like that, and the independent groups that talk about who's newsworthy or who's trustworthy and stuff, they'll come back and say that CNN is trustworthy, but trying to convince people of that because we've already swung one way or the other is hard. And you're right about that. But think about how are you going to convince somebody who's on the fringe, who doesn't, as soon as you say I heard it on CNN, they immediately dismiss you. Well, CNN hasn't done anything to the point where they should say it should be dismissed. And I'm only using these ones. So
you probably shouldn't lead. You have to know your audience. You don't lead with,
right, of course. Well, no. But my point is, though, is that if it comes out or something like that, the problem comes down to education. And I don't mean education necessarily schooling education. I mean, I think people have to speak up, and we have to teach communication. Somebody like you who's talking to someone that you're talking to that's maybe your age group, and it says something that is false, you can't just stay silent. That's pretty much the
and I don't, and that's made me unpopular.
Exactly, and then you become unpopular, and so on and so forth. But it's going to take the people that are willing to speak up, to actually say something and go. But in order to do that, you're going to have to talk intelligently. So if you're going to talk about vaccines, like if I'm going to tell somebody who doesn't want to take a vaccine for some reason, I'm going to have to be able to say, come up with the more or less facts that, like, yes, if you get, because you hear it all the time, well, why should I take a vaccine? I'm still going to get sick. That's because the vaccine was never meant to let you not get it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You have to be able to explain the point. And then you can, but that's going to happen at a local level. Coming back to,
it's going to happen in people talking to people. And I think another big part of it is we need to stop getting so emotional about it. People get so emotional, and it's like, I'm not trying to discredit your feelings. You can feel that way, but you also have to understand, and I do this too, is I'll get maybe loud or whatever, but for the most part, I feel like I've gotten pretty good at recently being able to control that, because communication is almost a form of professionalism. And when you're communicating something to somebody that it may not necessarily be receptive to what you're saying, or you know that what you're saying is going to come off as a disagreement, then do it in a way that makes them more receptive. It helps you and it helps them. And it's going to be a so much more rewarding experience versus, oh my God, I can't believe you just said that. That insults me because of this. Right. It's like, dude, well, as soon as somebody tells me that I insulted them, I'm probably going to be very defensive. I might not purposely try to fight them, but I'm going to be defensive. Therefore, I'm not going to be as receptive. And I know they would feel the same way. So why would you approach something in that manner?
Yeah, it's a
No. What happened? I can't hear you. You got to turn your audio on.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, welcome back. Yeah, we had we got cut out for some reason. So at the end of that one, just for those of you who just may have that, Austin can run this through since he's also our producer, engineer, etc. I said, "Oh, we'll be right back," and then now we're back. So yes,
wait. When did you say we'll be right back? I didn't hear that.
yeah, because you cut. That's how I knew we weren't going to be there. So on our audio track, it'll say, "We'll be right back." So there'll be a blip. There's going to be a blip in the video, but we should be fine with the audio.
Okay, cool. I'll make it look good. But the video, yeah. Well, I hope it got everything I was saying. What was the last thing you heard me say?
Up until actually you finished because I started talking.
So you got the part about I was like, I can't tell if you can hear this or not, but I'm gonna keep talking.
No, I didn't hear that part.
Oh God. Okay.
But I heard you up to say the point about where
I was going off.
Where you said something to the degree of I'm going to get to if somebody's going to tell me that I'm going to get defensive if I've insulted them, I'm going to get defensive and then and then I talked about you have to the communication is professionalism. I heard you. Yeah. I mean, I heard all of that. I don't know if there was more. I mean,
I think that'll probably be enough.
But and what I was about to say because I think I heard you. So if you were recording. Then obviously,
I mean, we have it all. I'm recording. Yeah.
So, but I started to say was that I was just in a recent situation where I was told, and a little bit was because I was a little hesitant. I wasn't as confident, but I was told that when I was speaking that I wasn't necessarily leading with a very good first sentence, and it was a little jumbled about like it was. What was it? They said I was like vomiting conversation or something like that. And I was thinking about like, okay, I guess some of that is because I was in a meeting that I was the junior person, quote unquote. So I wasn't quite sure, how assertive I should be. So I was hedging my bets a little bit. But apparently it came across as very wishy-washy in that I couldn't understand what I was saying. Well, specifically what I was saying was pushing it back basically on what they were saying. And I can't help but think that played a little part of it.
Right.
That had I been agreeing with them, would they have said the same thing? If I was agreeing with them, would they have said but that communication, and it's something that has to be taught. We talk about, I mean, we are coming up with, we're coming up on some time here, but getting back to, we've touched on Britney Spears because you didn't touch her. We've got the mask mandates that we talked about the mainstream media we've talked about, but Afghanistan was the other major thing that was coming up as far as that goes. And
that one's hard for me to speak on because I really don't know the specifics of it. I've only cursory kind of heard about what's happening. So if I say something on the topic, it might sound ignorant. Okay.
No, actually what you just said is actually a big part of what I've been reading about is that people aren't that interested. Whether they should be or not is another conversation altogether. But when was the last time you thought about Afghanistan before this?
It's been a while. And I don't mean to say that. I don't mean that disrespectfully because I do feel for the people that are suffering from just horrible things that are happening with the Taliban taking over and all stuff. I do genuinely, sincerely feel for that. I have friends who have family in Afghanistan. I mean, I do. I feel very deeply, but I'm a little unplugged in global news right now, and I have been for a little bit. So I want to take responsibility for that. I'm a little bit ignorant on the situation. I don't know if it's like some big thing that's been broadcast everywhere or whatever. And then another thing for people that don't know, I don't even have Wi-Fi in my apartment. Like I'm very unplugged as far as most people go. Like I'm not really plugged.
Yeah, you really should remedy that. But that's another subject. Let me give you the long and short of the Afghanistan. Essentially, after 20 years, Trump had said that we were going to withdraw. Biden basically said, you know what? I agree. We're going to do it. It was unfortunately broadcast. So all of the Taliban and everybody knew that it was coming. And they did assume that it was going to fall. They assumed that Afghanistan would fall under their control, but they thought supposedly. They thought it would take weeks, if not months, before it happened. Well, as soon as basically we started withdrawing, within days, the government fell. Afghanistan basically said, we're not going to fight you. And to a degree, I can see why, because they have basically were given the choices of, hey, if you don't put your guns down, we're going to kill you and your family and everybody else. So I get it. But on the other hand, they were supposed to be protecting their country. They were trained for the last 20 years and all our money and all our resources. So it's very disappointing to kind of see that was for nothing, really. I mean, not completely for nothing. And then, of course, all the human rights issues with women and things like that are falling by the wayside. So, but those are all things that are going to, the world will have to figure out down the road. The question was, did Biden know? And he has said that the intelligence, of course, there's conflicting reports, but he said the intelligence did not predict that it was going to happen. And obviously the intelligence was wrong. So now what do we do? Because we have tons of people. We still have thousands of people, not to mention the Afghans that helped us, that are going to get slaughtered if they don't get out.
Yeah. See, that's the part that I very strongly find just not true. You really mean to tell me that because here's the thing, right? If we felt the need that we had to be there for 20 years because they couldn't get their stuff together, so we were there for 20 years, we somehow thought that withdrawing in a way that didn't really allow for refugees, didn't really allow for any sort of tiered plan, we just kind of left, that they weren't gonna fall? Like, obviously we didn't feel very confident that we had prepared them if we were there for 20 years. So
you bring up an awesome perspective on that, because you're right, because they thought that it's funny because we acknowledge that, yeah, we know it's going to fall, but it's just not our problem anymore is really what it came down to.
No,
but your perspective
exactly
on it, yeah, but your perspective on it is like, exactly, it's kind of like, well, what did you think was going to happen? Why wouldn't it have fallen so quickly? Is it really what it comes down to?
Yeah, you mean to tell me that we had to do this for 20 years, 2 decades? And it really would, like, but we didn't expect that? That's bullshit. There's no way that they didn't expect that.
Remember, they expected it to happen. They just said that they didn't expect it to happen so quickly. Because I mean, it happened from when.
Yeah, but that's the part that I still think is a lie.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's. So, but basically, they're caught between a rock and a hard place. They're caught between saying, well, our intelligence isn't very good, or we're lying.
Right. Well, and there was another aspect.
Person. Okay.
There was one other aspect of it. It was that they did say, though, that there's some people were reporting that, yes, it could happen that quickly and stuff. And part of the problem is that we've broadcast what we're going to do. And the previous administration also took out a lot of troops. So when we got to this point, we were ill prepared because we had already taken out so many troops. So there was a conflux of a whole bunch of things that happened independently that ended up being that created basically this issue. But because by the way, there was another thing. There was one aspect that supposedly with the deal that Trump made, I say previous administration because it's not always him. I don't want to make it seem like it's piling onto him, because sometimes it's just not actually his fault. I mean, or at least it's his fault as because he was president, but who did it is another, kind of who negotiated. They did supposedly have a negotiation they had in place where we were supposed to be able to withdraw and they weren't supposed to interfere. They weren't supposed to do certain things. They didn't do that. They didn't hold to their end of the bargain. So technically we had an agreement.
Why would we expect them to?
Well, that's the thing. But the previous administration did. So we had a plan where if you do this, we'll do this. We did our part. They didn't.
Okay, but
so we started withdrawing. And getting them out and so on. And they were supposed to stay away. They were supposed to hold off. They weren't supposed to advance, but they did. We knew that they were slowly in the places we would leave. We knew that they were taking over. We knew. Now it wasn't the major cities. It was still the outskirts and things like that. So, but instead of saying, oh, whoa, you're not supposed to be doing that stuff. You're not supposed to, we're going to leave our troops in because that's our agreement. Trump just kept they kept taking him out. So that's those who actually saw what was happening, realized what you're thinking, that, well, wait a second. They're basically at the edges of the city. Why the hell are they not going to just, why aren't they going to just take the capital and stuff like that?
Yeah, but with all due respect, this wasn't Trump's problem. It fell under Biden's watch, and Biden had enough intel to know, shit, we were gonna lose it
No,
if they
actually,
withdrew in the way that
that's no, that's not
he
true because
ended
they
up
were already
having them
gone.
withdraw.
No, they were already gone. The troops were already gone before he got in, before Biden even got in.
No, some of them were, not all of them. They withdrew a whole bunch.
Oh, no,
Like,
I know, but no, it drew down. No, you're right. You're not all of them, but it drew down. Like he drew down from 15,000 to like, I think it was 2,500 or 3,500. Trump
I
did.
know, and to most people,
So-
I know, and to most people, that was a good thing.
Right.
Like,
It's not that it was a bad thing. That's not the point. The point is that we didn't have the necessary structure in place because of that. We would have had to send troops back in, which is what we're doing. We're
no,
sending
that's a
troops
very
back in.
retroactive way of thinking of it, though. I mean, so
There wasn't a choice, though, Austin. There wasn't a choice. There wasn't the troops there. We either had to send troops back in, which is what we have to do to maintain the order. What I'm saying is this current administration didn't. What?
They could have just left it the same.
Right, but that was the point. If you left it the same, then we're still stuck in a 20-year war.
I agree. I know that.
So there's the problem.
I know, but he made a choice, or that the Biden administration made a choice
absolutely.
to withdraw.
Yeah,
and that's on them now. Like, so now they have.
What if they didn't withdraw? That's the point.
Then they would have faced the bad press over staying in Afghanistan. But at least those people would have been.
It's not the bad press. We'd still be a war, quote unquote.
The Taliban couldn't have taken over the Afghanistan government, even if Biden didn't take out the troops that he did last week.
Right, but that means we're still at war. So the choice is: do we stay at war, or do we just have it, or is this just going to happen? Because I mean, quite honestly, the reality is, unfortunately, this is the true reality of it. This was going to happen no matter when. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years in the future, 10 years in the future. It was going to happen.
I agree, but I can't hear you, so I'm going to let you talk.
Oh, no, I didn't say anything.
No, I agree with you. It was going to happen no matter what. But the thing is any of the other fringe stuff about what Trump did, what anybody else did, it really doesn't matter. Because the truth of the matter is, the Biden administration made a choice between letting Afghanistan fall now or later. And I'm not saying that necessarily the choice was wrong, but anything outside of that, it doesn't matter.
No, but see, that's the thing. Where do you, not you, this is the not specific you, the what do you call it? The whatever you call it, you. I forgot the word for it, but while it's a horrible withdrawal because of what's happening, the reality is that ultimately I think you could call it the right decision. We had to get out.
I think that it's the right decision with the wrong implementation, because there should have been we should have had plans for refugees. We should have had plans because like what you said.
Well, they did,
and the Biden administration they also knew
they had the plans. They didn't anticipate that it would fall so quickly. They thought people in the city of, I think it's Kabul, or that's the airport at least. They thought, the administration thought wrongly. Now that we know, they thought wrongly that they would have free reign to be able to, or free access in order to get to the airport, get them out, and all that stuff. Part of that was also because the agreement that they had in place, which why would we trust the Taliban?
Dumb, though. Yeah, that's the dumbest thing I've ever. I didn't even know that, but that's literally the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Is why would you believe in that sort of agreement when you already knew they were breaking it? Because you said earlier they already knew they were breaking it.
I know. I agree.
Well,
I mean,
I wanted to say one more thing. I think that they're trying to play it off like we didn't know, when in reality they just didn't really want to help. They didn't want to, because it would have required a lot of attention and a lot of money, a lot of manpower, a lot of basically it takes away from the whole good press of we're leaving this war, because then it's not so much we're leaving this war behind us, it's we're changing the relationship of this battle. We're gonna withdraw troops, but we're taking all these people with us, and it looks more like a retreat versus we're cutting our ties with this. And
And
honestly, I think that's what they wanted. They wanted it to look like we're cutting our ties with this.
I think
So
that
they
I think what
basically
you
said
yeah
to
what you
Afghanistan.
well, part of that I think is absolutely true. I also think that there was that had they gone about their way, I do think they wanted to get the refugees out. I do think they needed to get those ones that helped us out, the ones that should come out, not just all of them.
Yes.
But they were very cognizant, and it already happened. It's already started on the right wing stuff and all of that stuff about how we're going to be invaded by Afghanistans. We're going to be invaded by all of these people that we're bringing with us, that were fleeing and stuff like that, which is not true. We're not being invaded. That's just ridiculous. However, they knew that, and I think they were thinking that they would have more time to get the refugees out, to get the people that needed to get out, the Afghanistans, the people of Afghanistan, to get them out. I think they had more time, and we're going to do it basically without the publicity, or because they knew that was going to be fodder for that right wing element saying, "Oh, these immigrants, now you're bringing them in." And what happened is all that got blown to hell. It all got blown to hell when it fell.
I think that
I don't think you're giving the administration, the military, I don't think you're giving the military enough credit. I think they had plans in place. I really do. They weren't going to leave them behind. They did plan on getting the people out. They had all of that, but they horribly misjudged the situation. I think they horribly misjudged the situation. And whether that was wanton, literally, like wanton ignorance, that they wanted to believe what they want, they hear two things and they chose to believe the more rosy intelligence picture as opposed to the people that were telling them no. That may be true. But I don't believe that. I would be positive that they had the plans to do it, mainly because
I'm not saying.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
I was just gonna say the boots on the ground. I'm sure that they believed that they were going to get these people out, or that they wanted to, and all that stuff, but they're not necessarily the people making the decisions. And I think that you're being maybe a little optimistic with that, saying that these people had hoped to do all this stuff. I don't think they really cared. I think that it would have been great. I think they thought that it would have been great, but it was what you were saying. They were afraid of the optics. Therefore, they decided to take a gamble. And to them, it didn't really matter if it fell all that much, because they weren't super concerned with the Afghanistan people, because they were more concerned with their own agenda. So if it went worst case scenario, it didn't really affect them very much.
Which is what's ironic.
That's really sad.
I think that's a combination of they chose to look at the more rosy intelligence, and they shouldn't have. They should have listened to the ones that said that it wasn't as good as they thought it was, the situation. And it's interesting because it backfired, obviously. Not only for our own people, because although I believe that most of ours, I think, will be able to get out, but now basically he had to send 6,000 troops back in. Because there is a humanitarian aspect that even although Americans don't seem to care as much, it's horrible. It is horrible. I'm sorry, if you call yourself an American, if you call yourself a patriot and stuff, and you think it's okay for the translator that helped us defeat or fight the Taliban, if you think it's okay for us to just say, sorry, we're not gonna be able to bring you with us, we're not gonna be able to get you and your family out, and you're like, well, I didn't want them here anyway. I didn't want that, that immigrant here in Afghanistan. You're wrong. That's horrible, because as a country, we made a deal. They sacrificed, they risked their lives, and for us to turn our back and go, sorry. That's the worst part I see of this, is that they look at it, the world looks at it like, wait a second. What are you doing, America? I mean, these people,
that's right. That's the biggest thing about it, is I think that we absolutely should have withdrawn out of Afghanistan. I think that was
that's not the question. Yeah, right.
No, it's not, but it's the way that it happened. And the administration either ignorantly or intentionally, and I think it's a little bit more on the intentionally side, just didn't really care.
Well, I think, again, I think I have a problem with your words. I think they cared. But I do agree with you that I think they chose to, they took a gamble, and it's always a gamble. They took a gamble and it did not pay off. That's what it comes down to. They took a gamble, and now the idea is that like, I think basically like in blackjack, you're sitting at 17, do you hit or not? Or if you're at 18 and stuff, most people will be like, they say, no, you don't, because it's just the risk is too great. You know the analogy I'm using. The risk is too great. The odds are that you're gonna bust and stuff. And they went, nah, we're gonna go for it. We're gonna hit. We're gonna be that one time. And they busted. And it's costing lives. It's costing status. It's costing, all sorts of confidence. It's all sorts of stuff that's happening.
Because it's horrible. And I know a lot of people in the military around here, and they're so disappointed. So disappointed.
It could have been done. I mean, the problem is that I don't know this. I'm just talking as an armchair person at this point. But the only way that I see the best way that this could have happened was that they would have had to have the military basically have control of the city and literally say, everybody, we're leaving. Before we leave, we are controlling the city and on lockdown, and you get all those people out. Well, that would have caused confrontation. There would have been literally fire, or those would have been shots fired, because the Taliban would not want to see all those people that they see that betrayed them, or that just could actually also, they talked about resources leaving their country. So had we did it that way, where we said we're pretty much putting a perimeter and we're getting all the people that we need to get out, that would have caused basically an escalation. That would have caused a firefight. That would have caused a hot war. And I don't know if anybody really wanted that. You're right about the fact that that would have been worse than what the situation is now. And you could argue, really? But then again, would you have wanted to have, it's hard to say, would you have wanted your brother, so to speak, if he was in the military, in harm's way in order to get those people out? Because we would have had casualties. We would have had people dying. And that would have been like counter to the whole, we need to get out. You know what I mean? So it was almost a choice of ours or theirs. There's no way. There's no
exactly.
way.
And that
there's
comes
no
down to
way.
my whole point is that
the situation was
like the people in control making the decisions decided to go ours.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily, again, I'm not necessarily saying that that's wrong. I'm just saying that the people
would have been
who made
nice
those
to have
to live with those decisions now.
Yeah.
And instead, it seems like they're trying to downplay it, or they're trying to like play it off like, oh well, we didn't know. Take responsibility for it. I just find it insanely difficult that we're supposed to have the best intelligence in the world, yet we didn't know.
Would you love this? How about this, Austin, as a capstone? This all started. Well, no, not all started. I won't take that. I won't say that. This is all connected with bad intelligence for Saddam Hussein, and it's ending with bad intelligence, basically with the withdrawal.
Yeah, and it's like, but to me, it doesn't. It's not real. It's a lie, and I think that they're just.
I think it's a little bit of both.
Bad intelligence. I just
I guess you're right. It's not necessarily bad intelligence, but it was the choice to believe one intelligence briefing over another is what it came down to. So it wasn't, you're right about.
And it comes down to them wanting to look like heroes. And again, I'm not necessarily saying that it was the wrong thing to get out, but I think that they just need to own up to. They never will. They won't.
I think you're right, because had it been presented, it could have been presented basically, we're getting out, it's going to be messy. There's things we don't know exactly how it's going to go. So be prepared. We don't know how it, you know what I mean? They could have set an expectation along those lines, and it would have been a little bit different. It would have been we're getting out. We're going to try to get out, as many people, we don't know what their reaction is. We don't know what they're going to do. So we're all going to be on guard. These are our plans, and go from there, as opposed to the, hey, we're getting out and it's going to be fine, and that kind of thing.
Right.
So,
well, essentially it came down to, and I'm going to use Biden as a figurehead because everybody used Trump as a figure. Well, the president, regardless, is going to be the one who gets held accountable. So it's like Biden threw a rock and then tried to hide his hand.
Yeah,
and
kind of.
And it's like, what did you expect to happen? You knew the Taliban wanted the area. You knew that they were going in to invade. You knew that they had the infrastructure to do it. And
Yeah, but you know what? All that is true. But in hindsight, there wasn't really a decision to be made. You still needed to get out.
right, but you mean to tell me that there was a no-win scenario, or not even
Yeah,
necessarily, not even that there wasn't a
we've gone
no-win
through it
scenario,
before.
but then there wasn't.
We've done it before in Vietnam. It wasn't identical. It wasn't
Yeah,
exactly
we're like
the same.
50 years, almost, not quite,
Right,
almost
but
50 years past that. So we haven't learned anything.
well, no, that's not the point. Is that no matter what, it was going to go like this.
It was gonna go bad, but it could have gone better. Yeah, I find it kind of difficult to believe that we couldn't have secretly smuggled some people. I find that really hard to believe. I don't know why that couldn't happen at all.
Oh, only some. But as soon as families start disappearing with the way the control and the network the Taliban had, I mean, they would know what's going on. I mean,
Yeah, I'm not saying we
it's
have
not
to
like
say to everybody. I'm not saying that we got to do it. I'm just saying that
and there's also the aspect of as soon as they started taking families, Austin, as soon as they started taking people and families, then you obviously knew whoever was left behind, that, you know what I mean, that they're gonna be in danger. So you have to,
right.
there's just
You have
so
to make
many
the
things that
choice
have
of
to be
who helped and who
balanced.
didn't, essentially. I mean,
Yeah.
it's which is it's sad, but there are certain things that I feel like certain people should have versus. God, it sounds so awful.
Well, no, the whole situation. That's the problem. Is
There has
that
to be a choice, and some people have to be willing to make that the dirty choice.
when
But
that's what
it's like
Biden did.
no,
That's
he
the
made the worst of the dirty choices, or
no,
maybe not
but
the worst, but he made a really bad dirty choice.
but
Versus,
he had. I mean, we can argue all day long that about how it could have been executed better, but there's no guarantees that had there been a better plan, that it still would have been executed better. Because who knows if the Taliban would have stepped up more aggressively. They haven't been as aggressive as they usually were. They're trying to show that they're a different regime, that they're not going to be as the terrorists.
But it was a manipulation. It was all a manipulation. As we
I understand,
see.
but that's my point. But that's my point, though, is that even if we had gone a different direction, we have no idea that you can't predict that the Taliban then wouldn't have said, "Whoa, no, we're not going to let that happen either." And then,
we could have. That should have been our default. Why were we taking the Taliban at their word?
No, you're not understanding what I'm saying. I'm not saying take them at their word. What I'm saying is had they done a different, like I said, if they had done a different scenario of like a more secure around the city to get people out and stuff, we don't know that the Taliban would have just said, yeah, go ahead, you can take the people, go ahead and evacuate. They probably wouldn't have. They probably would have engaged. So
right.
So the point is that there somewhere along the line, the decision to, like you said, was basically to say, we're not going to put our guys in harm's way. In order to not put our guys in harm's way, and gals, our people in harm's way, that means it could be that the ones staying behind are going to be the ones that are going to pay for it.
I know that that's how the message comes off, and it's kind of true.
No, I think that's exactly what happened. No, I think that's, but the decision is still, though, that had,
to me, this is kind of how I view it.
We should probably,
instead of being responsible for making a choice on who was allowed to come or not, him and the administration shielded themselves by saying, okay, well, we're just not going to essentially take anybody. And now it seems like the cover up for that is with the bad intelligence, or we didn't know, or whatever.
True. And it wasn't that they didn't take anybody.
Justification for them not wanting to be held accountable for the other decision, because the other decision is also bad and maybe even worse from a PR standpoint.
Yeah, that's true. But we're not going to answer this, so I am going to wrap this up, because the points are the points you're making are valid, and it's not. I'm not even necessarily disagreeing with it. It's just a bad situation. Probably could have been handled better, but in reality, the hindsight is it's almost kind of like ripping the Band-Aid off. We just didn't know how bad it was going to bleed.
Yeah, I think that isn't would be a good analogy if it weren't for the fact that the administration and Biden are basically trying to duck responsibility for it.
To a degree, yeah, I think so. I mean, but then again, that's of course what every administration is going to do. They're going to try to make the situation better than it is. So you keep expecting all of this political acknowledgement, and sometimes, I mean, I guess sometimes you get it, but on the other hand, that's politics. You're talking about responsibility, accepting responsibility, and that's definitely a personal level and what we want people to do. But politicians don't necessarily fall into that same category, and you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt.
I think, yeah, and that's been my problem with every politician.
Yeah, it's politics. You have to basically take the good with the bad, and like how much are you willing to sacrifice, and how much are you willing to put up with. But that's politics. That's the nature. Yeah. That's the nature of politics, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not a very good nature, though.
No, but it's better than anything else. Democracy is better than any other, because your other choices are authoritarian. We got to wrap this up. Nobody's going to want to keep listening to it after an hour.
No. You're right. You're right. Okay, but yes, you're right. It is better than any sort of authoritarian, whatever. But there could be a more truthful democracy, and I think that people are kind of, I don't know why that's such a strange thing to say or think or expect.
Because people don't do it at a singular level.
What do you mean?
People don't want to take personal responsibility for when they make a mistake. They don't even want to admit that they made a mistake. They just want to hold on and blame someone else. If you have that, that's going to trickle up, basically. Because somebody who doesn't get respected. They live in their own delusional world about how something is always someone else's fault. It's never their fault. So,
right, but while they live in that delusional world, we live in the world of their repercussions of their decisions.
Yeah, but when there becomes enough of them, people make the choice to do that, the non-responsibility, because it's easier. So unless you're teaching them or making, no, it's easier. Yeah, it's easier for them, and then it's easy for the next person and the next person and the next person, and then they teach that to the next person, to the next person, and they show that and they model it to the next person. And nobody's going to break that cycle until it's shown, till they see people that do, but they don't see that person. And that's how you end up in this dual society of alternate realities. You need someone to be able to cross over. You need someone to be able to basically have the credibility to those people, and also the credibility. And that's why you don't see those type of people. They come in once a generation, if that. So.
Yeah, but that's why I hold all these people in such a critical light.
You weren't raised like that. You and the rest of your brothers and sisters weren't raised like that. You were raised to basically say, no, take responsibility, so it's hard, but your lives will be much more meaningful and fuller, and you'll have a life that you probably at the end will be proud of. But the funny thing is those who don't, they won't know it. They'll think they had, but
I do feel good I do feel I've always this is the way I'm thinking, right? It is more important to feel, or at least for me, to feel fulfilled versus happy. And that's a strange decision to make. But
it's a fine line between the two. And happy, I know, I understand what you're saying with that. Fulfillment is something that there's very little wiggle room. Happy is something that can be fleeting. It can be momentary. It can be long lasting. It can be real. It can be, so when someone feels, it's the idea of when someone drinks away their sorrows, when they're drunk, they're happy.
Yeah.
But they're not fulfilled, because chances are whatever made them get drunk was the reason why they're not fulfilled. See, had they been fulfilled, they may not have felt the need to get drunk in order to escape whatever the issue is. So, but anyway, okay. So we're going to wrap this one up. So that is part 1, August 2021, Marquez Says Show. So remember, think more, care more, live more. You can change your life. We can change the world one decision at a time. Anything else, Austin?
I think you've wrapped it up nicely, Marquez.
We are out.